3. Gluttony. We will first define gluttony by defining what is a glutton. One who eats to excess. 2. One who has a great excessive appetite or capacity for something. The key to understanding what is gluttony is that it is the act of having excessive, beyond reasonable need, appetite, or desire for anything of the physical state of being. It could be food, or one could be what is termed a glutton for punishment by self or another. One could be a glutton for sex, for war or power over others, meaning he is hoarding unto himself, by expanding his capacity, a perceived physical pleasure because he feels unworthy, and therefore he fears there will not be enough of whatever is this object of his exquisite appetite. Oh, of his excessive appetite. Gluttony is a form of self-punishment because any excessive intake, such as of food, sex, or power, often proves to be the very thing which leads to the destruction of the glutton. It is this excess beyond reasonable need, which is not assimilated within the being, but is actually stored, which then produces the effect, remember the law of cause and effect, of actually devouring and destroying its host. It is the hoarding of energy beyond the ability to assimilate and integrate it within its being, which the glutton has trapped, and which is the nature of all energy, will seek to free itself from its static state in order to move and remain alive, even if it means the destruction of its host. Yes, this excessive trapped energy becomes much as a parasite upon the glutton. You see, Chelas, it is integrity of the energy. Oh, I'm sorry. You see, Chelas, the integrity of the energy deteriorates if it is accumulated, stored, and kept stagnant or static, or an inordinate period of time. Just as it is the nature of stored food or energy, such as fuel, to deteriorate if it is not somehow preserved. And even though the life of the food or fuel or energy is extended by your various preservation processes, the quality or integrity, because of the stagnation or dormancy state of the food or fuel, is still usually lessened. If you know God Aten, your Father will provide all that you ever need to sustain in His service. Why would you need to excessively hoard any energy within you, which is part of the spirit of life? The correct answer, precious ones, is that you do not need to overconsume the needs of your spirit or being to sustain you, if the Father within is acknowledged and accepted as your true unlimited power. You must know within your very being that you will always have what you need to sustain in His service. Now, let's please make this clear to you ones who may be now in a panic, wondering if your body, which you perceive carries more weight upon it than you would desire, is a result of gluttony. First of all, many of you underestimate what is your ideal weight. The image constantly fed to you of your thin is in has caused many of you much unnecessary preoccupation with this desire for a thinner you. This is vanity, which we will discuss in depth later within your deadly sins. Each one of you is gifted with a different skeletal frame for your body. If you are small-boned and petite in stature, then naturally you will need to carry less weight than one who is large-boned and petite in stature. When not tampered with, most of you were born with excellent natural functioning metabolic mechanisms for maintaining an ideal weight for you. Many of you simply eat much more than your body needs to sustain in healthy harmony. Gluttony, then, is excessive appetite and desire for the hoarding of much more of anything, which is a form of energy, than what one can properly assimilate in this experience. You each must learn to recognize whether your transgression against self is because of vanity or gluttony, both or neither. For example, when one is a glutton for punishment, This means he hoards upon himself because of a lack of self-honor and self-worth, continuous, excessive, and consecutive experiences which cause him undue stress and unhappiness. He becomes a glutton of the excessive repeat of his own self-created experience of victimhood. Gluttony really becomes a mindless behavior in that the glutton experiences a state of trance or transfixation upon whatever is the object of his gluttony. He is hiding from his pain of feeling unworthy, and by the mindless hoarding he becomes numb to his feelings. This, as you may now see, is much the same desire to hide from one's feelings of being inadequate, unlovable, or otherwise undeserving of life, of one who is addicted to drugs or alcohol. You know within your society you have many young men and women who feel so unworthy that they will repeatedly mindlessly gorge themselves, and then in disgust with themselves, they will vomit it all away. Ones have termed this addiction behavior bulimia. It has become the new disease of your young people who strive to be and can never measure up to some physical or other images of false perfection that either they have been given or that they themselves have adopted. What is the difference between one who is bulimic and one who eats more than she needs and retains the excessive weight upon the body? Both are eating to fill an emptiness within, often of feeling unloved by self or others. The bulimic, though, can hide his or her food addiction from the world by maintaining a slender physique, thereby experiencing both gluttony and vanity. The one who overeats and gains excessive stored weight is experiencing an addiction to food for a variety of reasons, but most often the reasons revolve around filling the emptiness within and or to give a protective shield of excess weight against emotional attack by self or others. This one, too, can feel vain and get on a treadmill of overeating and thereby trying various programs of dieting formulas, diets, exercise, subliminal tapes, and other so-called miracle programs to lose weight until both food addicted types are able to recognize and come to terms with why they lose food to fill a need, and also learn what that need actually is. The one addicted will not be able to cure his or her addiction. Do you see, dearest ones, these sins we are defining for you are really the symptoms of the Antichrist cancer within you, devouring, confining, and limiting your creative potential spirit confining and limiting your creative spirit of life. Your spirit is fighting the absolute agony of your self-created chains of creative limitation. You must now recognize these symptoms and ask the Father within you to give you His power, His wisdom, and His love to help you cast off these chains of limitation upon your creative spiritual unfoldment. 4. Lust. Lo and behold, precious ones, it has been this one sin upon yourselves and upon the Father within which has brought your species to near destruction by the unmerciful Antichrist. This one corruption of the Father's love, which is their love of the Spirit, which is the love of the Spirit of life within all of creation, has brought to you disease of your bodies and emptiness and unfulfillment upon your souls. Let us define lust. 1. Bodily sexual appetite. 2. Excessive sexual appetite, especially that seeking of immediate or ruthless satisfaction. 3. An overwhelming desire, a lust for power. 4. To have passionate or inordinate desire. Again, we are defining a behavior which is not only excessive and overwhelming, but also depleting to the spirit of life of God within you. Lust is adversarial to God within you because it is an unnatural, excessive desire allowed experience only upon your third dimensional physical plane. The poison seeds of the feelings of lust have been cleverly planted, molded, encouraged, and harvested by the Antichrist to replace and destroy what is true, godly, unconditional love of the Spirit of all life. You ones have become so confused by what is your desire for sexual activities that you believe it now to be your expression of love for your mate. Even those who know they lust and that it is not love still eventually confuse their lusty desire as part of their love for the one whom they enjoy sharing companionship. Lust for physical sexual release is lust, dear ones, whether it be for a one night stand, oh my, or done with one you consider to be your love mate. For a more thorough description of the corruption of your spiritual creative potential through the abuse of sexual behavior, please read or reread The Laws of God and Creation already set forth to print. So then, the term lust represents unnatural, excessive physical desire, usually for sexual union, but also one can lust for power or money or other things of your material illusion. By holding unto yourself these unnatural to spirit desires, you will simply become heavily detached in your illusion of reality, and will therefore remain heavy from the darkness of your ignorance. If there is one thing that we might encourage you to desire, and it need not be unnatural or excessive, that would be your desire to know and serve the light of true godness within you and all that is. 5. Wrath. Wrath is defined in your dictionary as 1. Extreme violence, extreme or violent rage. 2. Intense anger, rage, fury. 3. Any action of vengeance. And vengeance, revenge means 1. To inflict punishment, injury, or loss in return for the same. 2. A means of avenging oneself or another. Now understand the difference between what is wrath and what is anger, because the two are often linked, rightfully so, except that wrath represents a much more intense emotional state of rage, and one who is wrathful seeks to actively avenge his rage in some way against the ones who he perceives maliciously wronged him or ones he loves. So let us define anger: a feeling of strong displeasure and antagonism directed against the cause of an assumed wrong or injury. So you see, anger itself directed at self or another is emotion of displeasure because of witnessing, experiencing, or being the object of real or perceived wrong. To feel anger itself for action taken or not taken against self or another, more often than not begins with simple impatience, which, if not resolved and released, then becomes frustration, and finally will turn to anger, and then possibly wrath, if recognition of truth is not achieved through the knowledge of wisdom of the Father God Atman within. For example, many of you ones become most impatient when you perceive your time is being wasted by actions or delays caused in your perception by another. You oftentimes are so busy rushing around with self-importance, with the idea time is money, or some such thought, that any unplanned infringement upon your perceived valuable time causes you great distress and impatience. Many of you have become so caught up in your self-importance that you just find it hard to patiently wait for anything or anyone. Are there times when ones deliberately make you wait on them because of their perceived self-importance? Of course. But you see, you must learn to know the difference, and in any case, you're the one who suffers when you allow yourself to feel impatient, because the longer you hold it, the more uncomfortable you become by getting frustrated and eventually angry and possibly even wrathful. For example, one is continuously late, when he makes appointments of time with you or others, recognize first that he has the problem, whether it be just an inability to plan his time properly or deliberate infringement on another because of perceived self-importance. By understanding what the actual problem or circumstance is with the other, through accessing the knowledge and wisdom of the Father within you, you then can respond with integrity by bringing your observations about the circumstances of the delay directly up with the one who is excessively late. You may actually be surprised to find that they are most apologetic and thankful for the truth, and you may have assisted the beginning of their recovery from what is their problem. It is also what is termed actual constructive criticism, in that you wisely recognize a problem, and instead of internalizing it within or condemning the other, you offer them the truth about the circumstances and perhaps even suggestions of how to correct the problem. Criticism, on the other hand, is one of the most common negative offshoots of holding to self-feelings of impatience, frustration, and anger. By being critical of another, one is essentially condemning them and the behavior, action, or performance based solely on arrogant opinion of what is perfection, to elevate their own feelings of inferiority, and not to help correct the problem, whether real or perceived. Also, many of you ones are your own worst enemies by being entirely too self-critical about all you are and do, condemning self always to feeling inferior and worthless. Stop it. Dear ones, you are each carrying within you the spirit of life, God, Aten, creation. If you are not pleased with how you handled a particular situation, whatever it may be, then don't condemn yourselves. Bless the experience, learn the lesson, honor yourself and your courage, and make the adjustments necessary to continue enjoy the discovery and utilization of your spiritual creative potential within. Now, to feel angry because of a true injustice perpetrated against you or one you love is a signal to the Father within you that you feel helpless during those moments of anger, and perhaps you actually are, to set right an action already committed against you or one you love. You must first release your anger to God Aten within before it either internalizes and festers within you, or it turns up in degree to what is wrath. What you must do to release your anger is to recognize that the act against you or another is done, and that you participated in the manifestation of this act or crime against you for some lesson you needed. So the quicker you are able to come to the understanding about what is done, you can begin to confer with the Father within to gain the knowledge and wisdom of truth, to find out why you have chosen to be a victim and what must justly and logically be done with the perpetrator against you. Whatever the degree of crime against the laws of God and the creation, then, so too must the punishment be given also within the laws of God. In the creation. If one murders or rapes another, then the verdict of punishment must be given in level-headed logic and wisdom according to the law of God and creation, not wrathful vengeance according to your will of fury or wrath. For example, within the Pleiades star system, there are several planets occupied by your Pleiadian brothers and sisters. Although crimes against the laws of God and creation are now quite rare in the Pleiades, when they do occur, the ones committing same are actually sent to a prison planet of sorts, in separation from the God law-abiding citizens, or law-abiding ones, and also segregated by sex so that reproduction is not possible. This is the wise and logical punishment given by God's directive to his beloved children of Pleiades. The rest of Pleiades society is thereby kept in relative peace, balance, and harmony. The ones on the prison planet have freedom upon only the planet and must earn their survival without the more modern conveniences of Pleiadian society. Most spend the rest of that lifetime upon the prison planet, but a few are occasionally returned to society depending on the nature of their crime and how well they have recognized their sin and are willing to offer compensatory retribution of the victims of their crime or to Pleiadian society in general. Following is a quote from "And They Called His Name Emmanuel." I am Sananda. You have heard it been said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, exercise justice according to the natural law of creation. so that you find the verdict in logic and wisdom. Exercise love where it is warranted, and punish where the law of nature demands punishment. Ye shall, further, remain within the laws of the creation in deciding justice, for ye may not impinge upon the laws of the creation in that which has already been laid down for thy judgment in wisdom. Give unto him who asks of you, if their request is made in sincerely, and turn thee away from him who asks of you in dishonesty to deprive you of that which is yours in order to elevate his own comfort and status. You have also heard that it has been said, you shall love thy neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, exercise love and understanding according to the natural law of the creation, so that you act and feel rightly according to justice and logic. Exercise love where it is warranted, and despise behavior where the law of nature demands punishment. End quote. Does this mean it is wrong to feel angry and disgusted at the lies, deception, and injustice which you may now recognize, witness, and or experience on your manifested illusion? Not necessarily. If the anger moves you to do something to change it, what will you do first? Confer and commune with Mother, Father, God within you to find out just exactly what you have the ability to do. Does this take days or weeks to know? You can know in an instant what you must do if you have the desire and need to move quickly. Or it may take longer depending on your willingness to listen and intent to take action. Always it is your choice, that which you are given of spirit within, whether you are willing to accept and act upon it or not. If, for example, you have opportunity through the speakers to be introduced to the Phoenix journals, you know within that things are not right upon your place, and you hear about and are angry and disgusted at the hideous lies and deceptions shared with you. In an instance of recognition that there is truth here, your spirit will move you to learn more by reading the journals. That is your first step. Become informed with truth. Then what you do with it will be totally your decision. Hopefully you would be moved by your spirit within, by what you found, to at least share with all who would listen. Whatever else you are given by spirit to begin the change within self and upon your plane will be inspired within you by the gifts of talent given by Creator creation. Herein we would like to also repeat a truth as was wisely put by Commander Otten. There are no victims, there are only volunteers. Ponder it. Amen. Six, envy. We have already discussed what is envy under the laws of God and the creation, previously set forth in this journal. It does not bear repeating, though for thorough understanding of that which makes it one of the deadly sins of human. Remember, envy is a feeling of resentment or discontent over another's superior attainments, endowments, or possessions. When one feels envious, he actually feels inferior because he has judged the actions or attainments of another are first of all, desirous for self, and secondly, beyond the ability of self to attain or manifest. Dear ones, you can spend your entire lives and have searching outside yourself for what is better than the lot you have created, but searching outside yourself for self-worth, which exists within, will only confine you to feelings of critical frustration for the lack of accessing your own spiritual creative potential. You must know that all you have and are within your experience is what you have chosen and to have and be. Why need you feel envy instead of honor and reverence for another of what is your perception of outstanding achievement? Why not instead define what is outstanding achievement for self by the degree of joy and spiritual knowledge and wisdom it offers you? How will you do this? Take back your God-given power by taking personal responsibility for all experiences within your manifested illusion. Ask the Father God Aten within you to show you that which you need to fulfill His will in honor, balance, harmony, joy, integrity, and truth. Then wait upon God Aten within to show you what are your unique contributions to the joyous, creative unfoldment of the one all that is. 7. Sloth. Let us begin by first defining what sloth. Indolence, which means adverse to exertion, lazy. Idleness, laziness. Disinclination to work or exert oneself. What we have witnessed most upon your plane is the sloth of your God-given reasoning minds. This mind sloth is what has made you an easy target for lies and disinformation. The reason is that you have fallen into the habit of letting others think and reason for you, and by this mind laziness have found it easier to believe another's projection or opinion of what is truth, rather than properly researching by engaging your own logical reasoning mind with the Father within to achieve knowledge and wisdom of what is truth. Excuse me. You see, in this way, do you also shirk your personal responsibility by not recognizing your responsibility to seek and know the truth within? You ones then further your sin by complaining and criticizing bitterly, and thus casting blame outside of yourself when the lie or deception is later discovered by you. You ones will believe ignorance is bliss. Godly knowledge and wisdom accomplished and earned within is true bliss, precious ones. Ignorance of truth is an illusion that keeps you trapped within the living of a lie. You are not free, and the truly sad thing is you do not know you are duped and trapped. So then the chains can be brought around ever so tightly, and by the time recognition of truth literally slaps your awareness awake, it is often most traumatic and too late for you to extricate yourself until finally the death of the body releases your self-allowed anguish and horror. Is your true ignorance forgiven? Always. But now that you are becoming armed with the knowledge and wisdom within what is the truth, what will you do to change of the evil circumstances perpetrated by or against you? Will your mind sloth become apathetic, which is indifference? And then will you be overcome with the paralyzing hopelessness of despair and depression, which is giving your God power to the Antichrist? We, your brothers, your hosts of the word of truth and light and wisdom, which is God Aten in the creation, certainly intend to lessen the odds against you. Chelas, will you hear? Will you see? Will you accept God's hand of truth, of mercy, of love, and of wisdom? We offer you the choice, precious ones, and the choice is yours to make. May the truth, wisdom, and freedom of what is holy God's light within you be ignited in joy by your will, your choice, to serve the unlimited will of God Aten and the creation. So be it. There's also what is physical sloth or laziness. This simply is often counterpart to mind sloth. If you cannot move your mind into awareness, most likely your body will not be motivated either. It is simply inability to live or take in life. It is also unwillingness to take responsibility by taking action for making changes which would better your lot in life. Ones who are slothful would rather sit in quiet, or not so quiet, self-pity and blame all out there, and therefore not take self-responsibility for his perceived lack. 8. Fear. We have also spoken of the deadly sin of feeling unnatural and excessive fear in the previous pages under how to recognize the Antichrist within. We discussed that the Antichrist traps you in the illusion of what is future fear orientation. Let us define fear: an agitated feeling aroused by awareness of danger, trouble, etc. 2. An uneasy feeling that something may happen contrary to one's desires. 3. A feeling of deep awe and dread. And for fun, let us define what is awe. Reverential fear. Dread mingles with veneration, respect, or I'm sorry. And for fun, let us define what is awe. Reverential fear. Dread mingled with veneration, respect, or deference. And now we will define deference, which is yielding to the will or opinions of another or respectful regard. By keeping you locked in constant agitation or uneasiness about what could happen, you are robbed of the present moment of life, which is the now of eternity. Generally speaking, one who is fearful of failure, possibilities, probabilities, occupies much time in worry about possible consequences of a decision or an action, and will also often procrastinate, delay, making the final choice. Let us define worry. 1. To be uneasy in the mind, fret. 2. To pull or tear at something with the teeth. 3. To cause to feel uneasy in the mind, trouble. 4. To bother or pester. 5. Worries, something that causes anxiety. So many of you have expressed or heard the phrase, "I was worried sick." It is true that fear and its handyman, worry, can and will literally make you physically ill. Simply by simply by imaging in your mind a picture, idea, or horrid consequence, you actually manifest the realness of that which you fear upon yourself. Whether the actual physical manifested outcome occurs according to your worst fears or not, you have suffered in your moments of fear and worry as though it had occurred. Do you see? You are creating the worst, even if it be only in your mind, through the emotional reaction of fear. Often the question is asked in earnest, well, if we are told, for example, that the probabilities are high that we would soon experience a devastating earthquake in San Francisco and or Los Angeles, we are not feeding the negative probability. Oh, are we not feeding the negative probability by believing in it and thus ensuring that it will occur? We will answer in twofold manner. First, you must recognize the facts of truth of your present circumstances, that the planet Mother Earth is a being who has been poisoned by you, her guardians. She will need to cleanse herself, so this means massive earth changes will occur as part of the process of bringing to the surface the poisons of nuclear detonations, pesticides, etc., which have been festering within her. Also, you have the mighty powers of Russian cosmospheres, which unnaturally control the weather patterns and which are able to detonate bombs already in place along your fault lines. So you have the agenda of your beloved planet, who wishes only to be cleansed, and the agenda of the Dark Brotherhood, working through the elite few to control your planet, and that means to ultimately destroy much of the population in order to manage their domination more easily. This information about lies, deception, and cover-ups perpetrated against you by these ones is of the elite, which is coming forth through the journals, negative, and therefore not worth your time to consider because you fear feeding the perhaps undesirable to you outcome of the perceived negative probabilities? This material is information given in truth, be it perceived negative or positive in manifested reality. Unfortunately, most information presented so far is a result of God's promise to expose the Satans or adversaries who have managed by force and allowance to hold you hostage in illusion of separation against your Creator within you, by deception of truth of your power of oneness. When it becomes negative upon self is when you are no longer ignorant of truth and you still do nothing to change your circumstances because you would instead rather hide behind your fear and self-perceived helplessness. Is it wrong to make plans for your future in your now? Not if it corresponds to the positive creative unfoldment of self-improvement and self-expansion of your knowledge and wisdom of truth in your now. You see, your desire to know and serve God will itself propel you ever forward in knowledge and wisdom of truth. And so too, your desire will demand the discipline of self to remain focused on your goal. Let us define discipline. 1. Training of the mental, moral, and physical powers by instruction, control, and exercise. 2. The state or condition resulting from such training. 3. Punishment or corrective action for the sake of training. 4. A branch of knowledge. We would further add herein that there need not ever be punishment of self or another to achieve discipline. Simply integrity of focused attention in gaining wisdom of truth and recognizing and understanding consequences of thoughts and actions given in error are what is necessary to take corrective measures of action for successful training in godly truth to take place. This scribe has recently heard it said, in order to be a winner, given in reference to a karate competition, you must develop the 3 Ds: desire, devotion, and discipline. Well, we will ask you each to apply this beautiful simplicity of this statement to yourselves in your goal to overcome the false illusions of the Antichrist and become the winners of attaining your unlimited spiritual freedom by recognizing and reconnecting with the Father, Mother, Creator, creation within you. Remember, we discussed earlier how the Antichrist rules you by your desires, meaning for things or attachments of physical illusion. If your only true desire is to know and serve God Aten, then where does that leave the Antichrist? Out the door of your space on his behind. Remember this too, precious ones. When you truly ask the Father, Mother, God Aten within you for truth, you receive truth. This does not mean you will necessarily like or enjoy what you find, but as long as you remain devoted to the discipline of emotional detachment, such as from feeling paralyzed fear, you will become empowered by the wisdom of the God, Goddess within you. Does this mean you will never feel fear again? Not necessarily, but you will, by your desire, devotion, and discipline, learn to overcome your fear and take the necessary actions to bring about godly changes, whether it be within self or in situations or experiences put before you. Here is another aspect of understanding fear which you must also recognize. You ones can experience fear or alarm as a warning mechanism of clear or unclear present danger to you. Fear became the manifestation of your desire for survival on the physical plane. It was created by you it was created by you because of the limitation brought about by your veil of forgetfulness about your soul immortality. And it was thus encouraged by the deceivers or Satans in order to terrorize, control, and enslave you through your fear of death of the body. Actually, even those of you who now know your soul is immortal will still feel fear if you or your family is threatened in some way. You must overcome the fear by acknowledging the warning and seeking protection, counsel, and guidance with the Father within, so that you will be given instructions about how to best respond to the situation, whether it be defense of self and family or something other. Many ones simply fear physical pain. And suffering more than death itself. So you must overcome the initial fear warning and gain the counsel within to act in order to protect yourself or others. It is only when you are overcome and paralyzed by your fear that you will not listen to your inner guidance and thus lose your power to change the outcome of the situation. So, in summation, when we say you must conquer your fear, we are speaking of future fear worry orientation and that fear which paralyzes you into inaction or feelings of helplessness. Remember, you are never helpless with God. You must learn to trust. You will always be given whatever you need in all circumstances put before you. When you sincerely ask the Father, Mother within you, it is done. 9. Guilt. Now we will also discuss in further detail that which is guilt. Earlier we talked about how the Antichrist traps you in past guilt orientation as a way in which to rob you of the now or present moment of life. We will first define guilt. 1. The fact or condition of having committed legal or moral offense. 2. A feeling of remorse arising from a real or imagined commission of an offense. 3. Guilty conduct. Guilty defined as 1. Deserving of blame for some offense. 2. Convicted of some offense. 3. Involving, pertaining to, or showing guilt. The first thing you must realize is that to feel guilt about some past thought, word, or deed does not always necessarily mean you are guilty of a wrong against your spirit within. The wrong to spirit within occurs when you assume unworthiness or blame upon self and thus punish self by self-condemning thoughts and actions. You must always ask yourselves, do you feel guilt because someone else has offered it or imposed it upon you, and you have accepted or allowed them to blame you for some action or occurrence which you know you are really not guilty of? Let us give you an example of a response of false guilt, which many of you ones will relate with an experience of your modern Western civilization. Let us say, excuse me. Let us say you are a girl child of 11 years old. Up to this age, you have enjoyed relative childhood security, love, and dependence with your mother and father. Then, suddenly, you are told by your parents that they no longer love one another and cannot live together and will become divorced. Please understand this carefully, precious ones. In most all cases of separation of parents, the child or children blame themselves. You see, the child often believes that if mommy and daddy can stop loving each other, then they can stop loving me too. We would suggest to you ones that if a couple says that they stopped loving one another, they most likely never truly loved. Do you see how confusing this sort of drastic change and separation is to a child? Now, in our hypothetical case, let us continue with the story in which similar circumstances have occurred with many. The mother retains custody of the little girl. The father leaves town, he says, for other work challenges and opportunities. The child seldom sees him anymore. He is always so busy. The child's mother must go to work, let us say for the first time since she became married to the child's father. Do you begin to see what this looks like and feels like to the little girl? She feels she has been rejected. She begins to feel unloved and unworthy because she blames herself for her parents' divorce by perhaps not being a good enough little girl. Her mother works and comes home irritable, resentful, and angry at the little girl's father, which only adds to the little girl's soul anguish and feelings of unworthiness. The two people she loved, trusted, and even idolized the most no longer exist for her. She is alone. Do you ones realize that all most of you truly want is to be sincerely always loved, exactly the way you are without conditions? So the little girl begins to punish herself. She begins to seek love and acceptance outside of herself, which she feels she no longer has at home. Throughout her teen years, she walks the path of victim by self-destructive actions, and by continuous rejection by others. You see, like so many of you even now in adult state, she only wants to be loved, but because she feels unworthy of the true love she pines for, she continues to sabotage herself by choosing relationships which dishonor her as she dishonors herself. She may become angry towards male humans because she is angry with her father for leaving her. She may not only punish herself, but also seek to punish all men who represent her father. Eventually, her heart is so hardened she feels nothing, no joy, no love, no caring. It is her against the world, and she feels alone and bitter. Now, God, our Father, is most distressed when one of His becomes lost in negative response to her manifested experience. He, in His mercy, will send help to the child or young woman to help her recognize that there are those who do love and care for her. He will send her signs of His love so that she may forgive and heal the disease within self. Will she recognize the love of our Father presented to her? It is her choice, for God will never force any. He will, though, wisely choose the ones who will manifest His love for her, which He deems will be most acceptable to her. It will then depend upon her soul integrity how well she will recognize, forgive, and overcome her self-imposed guilt. Many of you ones who now serve faithfully within His service have manifested for yourselves very difficult circumstances in your growing years in which you had to ultimately understand, forgive, and overcome in order to serve His will as willingly as you do now. Why? Mostly, you once have simply asked for difficult testing in order to gain the compassion and understanding of how and why your brethren have become so crippled, deceived, and so lost for so long, so that you can relate with the circumstances of the deceived and thereby the most effective in helping them see the light of godly truth within them. Be most grateful for the lessons offered, learned, and overcome, Chelas. You are spiritually much stronger because of them. Now we will discuss past guilt orientation a bit more. If you feel guilty for some past deed, you must determine why a guilt is felt. If you recognize an error against another, then by understanding and learning the lesson and then self-forgiveness, you will have released guilt. Many of you instead wallow around in the horrible situation and wish only to feel sorry for yourself so that you think you are not responsible for the error. Recognize your responsibility, learn the lesson, and forgive and release it. It is done, and you further the transgression against your spirit by reliving the dastardly deed in your mind and not living your moment now in fullness. This is punishment of self and is not of God, but of the Antichrist. Do you see? You walk around saying, I should have. Well, you didn't, and it's over. The next time a similar situation presents itself, and it will, you will know how best to respond with godly integrity, right? 10. Hypocrisy. Remember, hypocrisy is the pretense pretending to of having feelings or characteristics one does not possess, such as virtue or piety. We discussed under the laws, number 17, that one of the biggest signs carried by ones possessed of evil is their hypocrisy. We will first discuss the hypocrites of your religious institutions who will carefully cultivate the appearance of godly piety and high virtuous standards. And they will speak with conviction about the virtues of what they, in their monogamous goodliness or godliness, possess in order to lead you into the righteousness of God's kingdom where they themselves reside. So while you deceived ones are crying tears of joy for being allowed the opportunity to be in the presence of one so great, you gladly fill the hat of this false one with all the gold you can spare Just so, perhaps, you too may be found worthy and allowed entrance into God's kingdom. But the hypocrite has you now. He will pass the hat again and again until you have no more to give. Then he will abandon you and call you unworthy. And mostly many of you ones have believed yourselves unworthy and thus deserving of poverty. All the while he is seducing you and making you his slave, the hypocrite sits mockingly and smugly in his false splendor of hatred and manipulation, drooling lasciviously and covetously over the hoards of wealth he has stolen from you. The blind and ignorant sheeple. After the religious hypocrite has told you what you must not do and what you must do to reach God's kingdom, and he knows you believe him, he shows you how to belong to him, and he will make you pay dearly. All along, while the hypocrite is leading you into his slaughterhouse of deception, he will quite systematically, behind the doors of secrecy, himself break every rule of godly behavior which he has instructed you to follow. The hypocrite's motivation? Power and control over others at any cost. He always believes himself superior in all things, particularly intelligence, when he is able to dupe and deceive others and also garner their gold for his own selfish interests. This one is under the spell of evil, as is called false pride, or also cancerous narcissism, which we discussed earlier under pride. You precious blind ones now have allowed infiltration within most of your world government systems and the agencies set up therein of the evil narcissist hypocrites at the lead or head, positioning themselves for the destruction of all goodness and freedom, and ultimately your enslavement to their self-will of evil control. They are the ones now without conscience, who will tell you all you wish to hear and then do that which they please, to control you and render you powerless against them. The bastard seed of evil is now so insidious it has infiltrated and possessed nearly all who would call themselves your leaders, and most of you ones know it not. That is how the narcissistic hypocrite, Satan, or adversary against God, has come now to rule you, quietly, secretly, and with extraordinary cunning. They have nearly accomplished your enslavement without most of you even knowing the crimes of power manipulation which have occurred before your very beings. Is it hopeless? Never. God wins in the final confrontation with evil, but each fragment must choose God's will by understanding and following the laws of balance given in order to be allowed entrance into his holy kingdom of love, of truth, wisdom, and life. What will you do to earn entrance into God's kingdom of light? God Aten waits for your decision. Aten's love and protection and guidance is a breath away, precious Chelas. He awaits your sincere petition. Will you now take God's hand of life, or will you fall into the trap of illusion, of darkness, destruction, ignorance, and separation, which is evil? We shall now briefly address hypocritical behavior practiced by you common folk. Are you kind and friendly with ones to their face, and then because of jealousy, envy, or prejudice, denounce and criticize them in private behind their backs? This is commonly practiced among you ones, mostly without your awareness of same. We will set you ones. We will set you to awareness now. You must not judge another human fragment as less or greater than you in God's reflection. Only judge their behavior, which you know goes contrary to the laws of balance of God and creation given forth. You honor ones when you extend your hand in honest love and friendship, but you extend your hand giving the impression of love and friendship and secretly despise this human because she is black or brown or white or poor or rich or fat or thin or. Then you too are a hypocrite. We will discuss more in detail on bigotry and prejudice lastly within your deadly sins. So, to discover or recognize the narcissistic hypocrite, you will need not believe what he says he is or does or represents, but find out what he does in secrecy. Remember, by their fruits ye shall know them. 11. Vanity. First, we will define vanity. 1. The condition or character of being vain, conceit, arrogant self-esteem. 2. Ambitious display, ostentation. 3. The quality or state of being fruitless, useless, etc. 4. That which is vain or unsubstantial. Now we will define vain. 1. Filled with or showing undue admiration for oneself, one's appearance, etc. Conceited. 2. Unproductive, fruitless. 3. Having no real basis, empty, vain hopes. 4. Ostentatious, showy, in vain, to no purpose, without effect. Vanity, then, is the preoccupation with admiring, changing, or altering and displaying one's physical appearance, image, or form because the vain one feels unworthy or inferior within and often hides behind an ostentatious, pretentious, excessive exhibition, display of self, or of superior arrogance. Narcissism, then, is one who unduly, excessively, unjustly admires self inside and outside in self-elevated status and separation from others because he feels superior to others in appearance, in intelligence, and importance. Evidence of the obsession for appearing beautiful physically according to the self-accepted or adopted societal standards is most prominent with both male and females, primarily within your Western civilization. Many ones have become ruled by and preoccupied with their physical appearance, which to them most often means being acceptable to others. Why? Because the Antichrist has told you and given precise limitations of what is beauty. For example, within your controlled advertising media, you have lovely ones who model for products. This to give you desire for these products by creating images for better acceptance value by appealing to your innate drive within, which they have corrupted and erroneously redefined as sex drive. Remember libido? And thus cause you to want the product, which gives a false promise of beauty, sex appeal, health, youth, wealth, status, etc., according to their limited standards of what you must desire of what is beauty, sex appeal, health, youth, wealth, status, etc., which these models, you are taught, represent because they look good. With all of the attention given from childhood on only to physical appearance, the spirit within shrivels and pines for allowance and acceptance and freedom. This because the Antichrist, the anti-God, which they have now allowed within, slowly crushes and all but destroys the beauty and divineness within which is the spirit of life of God in perfection.